The last 2 weeks has been particularly interesting. We started with the President Buhari presenting the budget 2018 draft document in those two heavy boxes to the National Assembly joint sitting. Then after that, we got our inflation for October. Then after that, we got the GDP numbers early this week. Then, of course, the discussion is still around VAT and what's coming in through state by state, who's generating, what state is generating more VAT than the other, and what sectors. That's also from the National Bureau of Statistics yesterday. So we'll have quite a lot on the economic front, on the main street. We need to take them to the street. Let's start this conversation, a very interesting one, with Tajuddin Ibrahim, who is the head of research at Chapel Hill at Denham. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you.
Thank you.
Let's get some of this issue. What's your take? Let's start with the GDP. For you, Chapel Hill, you folks, what are the key issues for you in the GDP story, whether it is the Q2 or Q3, an outlook on Q4?
I think the major takeaway in the GDP number for us is that Nigeria is back on a growth path. So we saw stronger Q3 growth of 1.40 compared to 0.72% that the country recorded in Q2. That is, further level up in terms of growth acceleration. But on a year-to-date basis, GDP growth is about 0.43%, which is still below what we expect for the full year. We are looking for 0.8% for the full year. So we have seen for the first 9 months, 0.43%. So that speaks to the possibility of the country not recording our expectation of 0.8% growth. And that speaks largely to the sort of negative growth that we saw in the non-oil sector of the economy.
We still have a lot of work to do, and this is very good news. Sectors that keep ringing in the news and every analyst is talking about is the construction, the manufacturing, the non-oil basically. So if we take oil out of it, we're still in the water. Technically speaking, we need to move on the entertainment. Aside agriculture, where else? What else is moving? And what do we need to do if we're doing around 0.43%? Do you think we'll be able to ramp up in the final 3 quarters or 3 months of the year to get to around 0.8?
Certainly what could take us there is partly a lower interest rate environment, but we are going to end this year on a high note in terms of interest rates, and the Monetary Policy Committee has sat and decided and left interest rates unchanged. So,
and that's where we are as a country, standing in front of a moving train.
Yes.
In a manner of speaking. That's where we are. Because the train is moving. We're standing right in front of it. Mm-hmm. But we need to move.
Yes.
Interest rate. Mm-hmm. But the central bank, the monetary policy is not ready to move.
Yes.
Something has to happen.
So what could happen is increased spending by the government on projects, infrastructure project in this case, to create increased employment, more employment for the youth, so that you see further growth in small, medium, and micro businesses in the country. So you would see the triple, sort of effect on the overall economy in terms of output. But sadly, again, we are in November. It is unlikely that we see such an impact on the economy before we end this year. And so the story looks more like a 2018 story, in my view.
2018 story.
Yes.
So we'll fast track to the future. So let's live in the future. The central bank, the last MPC, which was just a few days ago, was all about the inability. There's a limit to which you can pump some money into this economy, because the absorptive capacity is always very tender. Mm-hmm. So the central bank is not willing to lower the cash reserve ratio, at least open the back door for the banks to take some money back out. If you can't do the interest rate front door, you do the CRR back door.
Yes.
So the central bank locking both doors.
Yes.
So MFLA is locked in. Then the banks are outside. Mm-hmm. So we can, because they're not sure about the ability of the banks to transmit to the. So someone has to spend money. And that brings us to the government at the center, right?
Exactly.
Now, are we spending based on 2017, 2016 history, lessons that we're going to spend in the right way to create these jobs, create this GDP in 2018?
We need to spend more in 2018, and that is reflected already in the GDP, in the budget number. So the government looks to spend 8.6 trillion compared to the 7.4 trillion for last year. So that has to happen. And interestingly, we have a higher portion of that budget this time around, being directed towards capital expenditure. And that speaks to what could create increased employment in the economy, which should support output. And then we begin to talk about better growth or an improvement in growth. That is on the side of the fiscal authority. That is, to my mind, like inevitable. It has to happen for us to accelerate that growth. On the monetary side of it is for us to have lower interest rate in 2018 so that you stimulate consumers' appetite to borrow at a lower rate.
But the central bank is scared of opening the door and letting interest go on. Then, according to the last two MPC communique, tighten the noose around the neck of the poor in Nigeria all the more. So this is a dilemma between fiscal and monetary policy direction and action.
There is no way that the country will record accelerated growth, or let me say a stronger recovery, if there is no collaboration between the fiscal authority and the monetary authority.
No, they are collaborating on paper, and the central bank keeps saying that. But in terms of action,
the action is just being delayed. It is going to happen in 2018, most likely the first quarter of 2018, or at the latest, the second quarter of 2018. What we will see is a case where, in my view, the first to happen is for the CBN to let go of liquidity in the financial system by cutting the CRR so that more banks have liquidity in their possessions. And if that happens, it should be followed with a